There's a truth that every empath eventually collides with. Not gently, not gradually, but like walking into a wall they didn't know was there. The truth is this: the people you love the most will not always be capable of loving you back the same way, and no amount of devotion, patience, or self-sacrifice will change that. Most empaths spend years, sometimes decades, trying to disprove this truth. They pour themselves into relationships that run on empty. They give and interpret the exhaustion as evidence that they just haven't given enough yet. They believe with every fiber of their being that love is something you earn through suffering, that if they just hold on long enough, the other person will finally wake up and see what's been standing in front of them all along. But Carl Jung identified something that shatters this belief entirely. He found that empaths don't just feel more than other people, they project more. Specifically, they project their own capacity for love onto people who don't share it. Jung called this the projection of the anima or animus, the unconscious tendency to see in others what actually lives in yourself. The empath looks at someone emotionally unavailable and doesn't see unavailability. They see potential. They see the version of that person that could exist if the conditions were right, and then they exhaust themselves trying to create those conditions. This is the lifetime lesson. You are not seeing people as they are, you are seeing people as you are, and the distance between those two things is where all your suffering lives. Jung spent years studying why empaths fall into this pattern so predictably. What he discovered was that the empath's wound and the empath's gift come from the same source. Their ability to feel what others feel, to sense unspoken pain, to intuit what someone needs before they ask. All of this comes from an early adaptation. Somewhere in childhood, the empath learned that their safety depended on reading other people's emotional states accurately. A parent's mood shifted, and the child learned to shift with it. Silence meant danger. Tension meant adjust. Disapproval meant you failed at the only job that matters, keeping someone else okay. This adaptation becomes extraordinary skill. The empath grows into someone who can walk into a room and immediately sense who's struggling, who's pretending, who needs something they won't ask for. But the cost of this skill is invisible and devastating. The empath never learned to read their own emotional state with the same accuracy. They became fluent in everyone else's inner world while remaining functionally illiterate in their own. Jung recognized this as a profound imbalance. The empath's awareness is perpetually directed outward. They know what you're feeling before you do. But ask them what they need and they go blank. Ask them what they want, separate from what everyone else wants for them, and they struggle to answer. Ask them when the last time they made a decision purely for themselves was, and they can't remember. This outward orientation is what makes empaths so vulnerable to exploitation. Not because they're weak, but because they genuinely cannot distinguish between their own emotions and the emotions they're absorbing from others. When someone close to them is unhappy, the empath doesn't just notice it, they feel it as their own unhappiness. And because they experience it as their own, they feel personally responsible for resolving it. This is the trap. The empath believes they're acting out of love when they sacrifice their own needs for someone else. But Jung would say they're acting out of fusion. They literally cannot tell where they end and the other person begins. What feels like generosity is actually a boundary failure, so fundamental that the empath doesn't even know it's happening. The lifetime lesson requires the empath to do something that feels like a betrayal of everything they are. They have to learn to separate, not to stop feeling, but to stop treating every feeling as an instruction, not to stop caring, but to stop assuming that caring means fixing, not to close their heart, but to recognize that their heart has been making promises their body can't keep. Jung observed that empaths who begin this separation process go through a specific kind of disorientation. They describe feeling selfish for the first time in their lives, and that feeling terrifies them. They set a boundary and the guilt hits like a wave. They say no to something they would have automatically said yes to, and they feel like they've committed a crime. Someone expresses disappointment in them, and instead of immediately adjusting to make that person comfortable, They sit with the discomfort, and sitting with it feels unbearable. But Jung found that this unbearable feeling is the exact point where growth happens. The empath is learning, perhaps for the first time, that they can tolerate someone else's negative emotion without making it their emergency. That disappointment directed at them is not the same as danger. That someone being unhappy with their choices doesn't mean their choices are wrong. This lesson takes time. It doesn't arrive in a single insight or a weekend workshop. It unfolds slowly, painfully, through hundreds of small moments where the empath chooses themselves and survives the guilt that follows. Each time they don't collapse back into the old pattern, something strengthens inside them. Not a wall, but a floor, a foundation they never had. A sense of self that doesn't depend on being needed. Jung called this the birth of the true self. The empath had been living through a constructed identity built entirely around their usefulness to others. Their value was measured in what they could give, absorb, fix, or endure. Without that role, they didn't know who they were. The lifetime lesson forces them to find out. What emerges on the other side is someone who loves differently, not less, but with awareness. They still feel deeply, but they no longer confuse depth of feeling with obligation to act. They can witness someone's pain and offer compassion without abandoning their own needs to do so. They can love someone and simultaneously recognize that this person is not safe for them. They can hold both truths without the cognitive dissonance that used to tear them apart. Jung found that empaths who learn this lesson stop attracting the same patterns, not through mystical energy shifts, but through changed behavior. They stop signaling unlimited availability. They stop rewarding people who take without giving. They stop treating their own boundaries as negotiable. And because they've changed what they tolerate, the people around them change too. Some rise to meet the new standard. Most don't. And the empath learns to let the ones who don't go without chasing them. The lifetime lesson every empath must learn is deceptively simple. You cannot love someone into being who you need them to be. You cannot heal someone who isn't doing their own work. You cannot earn reciprocity through sacrifice. And your worth was never determined by how much of yourself you were willing to give away. Jung would tell you that the moment you stop trying to save everyone else is the moment you finally begin to save yourself. Not because you've become selfish, but because you've realized that a lifetime spent pouring into empty vessels leaves you with nothing. And you deserve more than nothing. You always did. The lesson isn't that empathy is a curse. It's that empathy without self-awareness is self-destruction. And the empath who finally understands this, who finally turns that extraordinary perception inward and asks, what do I actually need? That empath doesn't just survive. They become the person they spent their whole life searching for in everyone else.